I don't need you to believe this. I need you to understand the order of things so you don't make my mistakes if you ever find yourself westbound at night on the old road. I'm Nate, 32. Moving furniture pays my rent and long solo. Drives keep my head clear. So last August, I took a one-way haul from St. Louis to Barstow in a beat-up 15-foot U-Haul with a borrowed CB and a promise of cash on delivery if I stayed off the interstate as much as I could. Daylight Route 66 is postcards and milkshakes. Past midnight, it's a black seam through dead towns, sun-bleached signs, and vacancy lights that hum for no one. The heat hangs even after midnight. Bugs paste themselves to the windshield. Your headlights carve holes in the dark that fill back and behind you. I like that kind of quiet. Around Cuba, Missouri, the CB hissed and a man's voice came through like it had been waiting there for me. Westbound white box, you running light. I told him negative furniture. Strapped and tarped. He chuckled the way older drivers do when they smell your green and said, "Copy, Elk City for gas. Don't touch the Amboy exit after midnight." Then whistled 3 neat notes and dropped. I forgot him until Tucumcari, topping off under, buzzing tubes while a kid at Pump 4 crouched to tie his shoe beside my rear tire and left a fingernail-sized chalk smear on the sidewall. It wasn't dust. It was chalk, clean and bright. He stood, looked beyond me toward a flatbed idling where the lot lights didn't reach, and pretended not to care. I wiped the mark with my thumb and told myself I was inventing villains to stay awake. Just before Santa Rosa, I hit my first roadside setup. Cones and triangles stacked just right, a minivan with the hood propped, for way flashers winking like a metronome, and a guy in a high-waist vest stepping out with his palm up in that calm, official way that makes your foot find the brake by itself. Everything about him was almost right, except the vest was clean where the desert makes everything dirty, and there was no state logo on his belt, no badge tan on his arm, and his eyes stayed on my cargo longer than on me. Like he was measuring. I eased to the left, lifted the fingers off the wheel in the polite way, and rolled past. The CB popped. "White box west, you missed a friend," the same voice said, followed by those 3 notes again, like a signature. I shut the radio off. The old towns where my fuel stopped Shamrock. Eric, because interstates make me soft and small diners keep me real. At Shamrock, I grabbed coffee under a row of paper Route 66 placemats and came back to find a receipt tucked under my wiper for a tire rotation I hadn't bought. Cheap logo, local number, blue ink flourish in the corner. Amboy after midnight call first. I crumpled it and it slid under the truck and out the other side like it didn't believe in friction. The desert eats time. New Mexico flattened into a ribbon of heat mirage, Arizona into long low mesas and leftover neon. Kingman gave me a vacancy sign that blinked like a tired eye and a manager who slid me a key that needed to be convinced and sawed. Windows stick, the way a man says everything sticks out here. I slept with my boots by the door and my wallet in my sock. At 12:31 a.m., the hallway learned someone's weight. 1 set of steps paused by my door, another pressed upon. To my window from outside, the glass bowed in a hair, then out, like breath. A shadow crossed the slit of light under the curtain, square at the top, high waist at the bottom. Somewhere in the hallway a man whistled 3 notes that weren't music so much as a reminder. When I checked the lot at dawn, my rear tire wore a fresh chalk crescent and the padlock on the roll-up had a new, careful scratch like somebody had rehearsed a cutter and backed off. To other trucks had the same chalk smile. The office corkboard held 3 missing flyers with the same last seen line, Route 66 west of Ludlow, and a reward number I later learned never picked up. The manager shrugged. Kids, he said. Tourists leave stuff. I didn't argue. I just left. Near Seligman, the flatbed with no plates returned, lingering to car lengths behind. Then 3. Then 2. When the shoulder narrowed, he slid up beside me, passenger leaning out in a spotless vest and giving me that patient helper wave, palm forward, eyes warm in the way you can practice in a mirror. He mouthed, "You've got drag on the rear." I mouthed back, "Way station," because I'd seen the brown sign for a state scales site 5 miles ahead, the kind with cameras and an office. Andy nodded like a friend who approves your choice. Then he cut in front, tapped his brakes, twice, and the bed flashed an oil sheen that threw my headlights back at me. The scale sign grew, and the flatbed drifted toward the Amboy turnoff like he knew my plan and preferred his. My CB, dead and dialed to 0, coughed itself awake. White box. Safer pull here. We'll balance your load. Same man. Same chuckle. The whistle. And another voice on another channel saying, "Bring him to the lights." I gripped the wheel hard enough to feel the stitch. I stayed on 40 and dove into the empty way station lot under the red LEDs of the cameras and breath like I'd run. A highway patrol car ghosted by 5 minutes later without stopping. 3 minutes after that, the flatbed slid past on the interstate like we'd never met. The passenger lifted a satisfied palm, as if he'd learned what he needed. I told myself rules. Towns for coffee. Don't pull for anyone with a vest to clean. Don't let cones choose for you. By Ludlow, my chalk crescent had vanished from. The tire gone. Not smeared, and a station attendant with a stitched-on name patch that was either William or Winnie depending on the fray. W held my door with a valet's patience and said, "Back right looks low. Want me to top you off?" His palm wore a line of white dust like where chalk had been. I said I'd handle it. He kept his hand on the door an inch too long. "Amboy's got repairs," he added. "After midnight it's quieter. Exact change." The smile he gave me only reached the top half of his face. I shut the door and drove away without looking back. The sun fell like a trap swinging shut. The road between Ludlow and Amboy is the stretch everybody photographs at noon and nobody wants at night. With no other headlights, your own become the only proof you're real. Amboy's famous sign burned in the distance like a lighthouse for a shipwreck museum. The motel bones threw long shadows. The pumps were props. A sandwich board chalk repairs sat skewed under the eave with letters to need for a place that lives on dust. A white van waited off to the side, rear doors yawning, a battery lantern glowing inside as if a scene had been arranged and was now waiting for actors. A man in a vest stepped into my lane and lifted that same official palm. Another, clipboard in hand, stood further back in the glow, posture easy, pencil ready to point where he needed me. The sky above them was so full of stars it made the ground feel like a lie. I rolled down to 10, thought about the kid in the chalk, thought about the CB calling me with the fuse in my pocket. A third man stepped out from my blind side and set a reflective triangle 10 feet in front of my bumper with ceremony. Red in the road is a reflex. You stop or you admit something about yourself you can't fix. I stopped for half a breath, enough to see Clipboard's smile settle into a count already done expression. He pointed at my rear tire and mouthed, "Low." Then with the pencil drew an inviting line onto the gravel under the motel awning. I nodded like a man who agrees in order to choose his own refusal, rolled an inch forward, then another, then cranked left hard. The U-Haul bounced the triangle with a crunch that wasn't safety plastic so much as glued carpet and bottle caps made to look like the real thing. and in the same motion I straightened, took the main strip again, and buried the pedal toward Roy's neon like it could bless me. In my mirror, highways dropped to no wheeze. The polite wave turned into a sharp, angry blade of a gesture thrown at clipboard. The van's lantern snapped out. A truck I hadn't seen opened its headlights without starting, like eyes deciding to be eyes. Gravel spit from my tires, and the CB woke fully even with the fuse in my pocket. Bring him, the first voice said. Now, the second repeated, and then the third voice, the one that always lagged a half beat, like it was learning how to be a person, said now too, tasting the word. The road west of Amboy, a black belt with no belt loops. The load rattled. My palms were glass. In the dark beyond the sign, two sets of lights found the main road and did not hurry until I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined them. Then they hurried. I kept the wheel straight and the speed needle where the U-Haul barely liked it, letting the road come to me instead of sawing at it, because panic wastes distance. Two vehicles settled in behind, a flatbed with its running lights dimmed to a predatory glow and a low sedan that kept just far enough back to feel like a thought I couldn't quite finish. The CB, dead by any logical measure, muttered coordinates like a coach on the wrong team. Westbound white box. He'll hit the dip past the lava beds. A pause, a second voice repeating the sentence half a beat late as if taking dictation, and then a third, airy voice adding, lights off at the cattle guard. I killed my highs for a heartbeat to kill their glare and nearly swallow the black. When I snapped them back, the flatbed had moved up into the oncoming lane and matched me there, not boxing me, just showing me it could. Its passenger lifted, that same palm patient, helpful. The salesman sacraments, then pointed past my hood to the shoulder like he was doing me a favor. My mouth was dry enough to creak. The map in my head unrolled the memory ahead of schedule. A long pencil bridge over a dry wash with one dented guardrail and a cattle grate that sang like cutlery when people who didn't belong crossed it. Great. The first voice said, great. The second said, the smile audible. I stayed centered and drove the grate like it was ice. Soft hands. No sudden prayers. The load hopped and settled. The flatbed tapped its air horn once teacher's desk, not warning. Then the sedan behind me cut its headlights entirely and let me feel it instead of see it. A hole in the night that learned my speed with me. I cracked my window an inch and the desert came in dry and mineral, like licking a coin. Ludlow's canopy landed ahead like a clean thought. A family car slept under it. Mother reclined. Kid blue glowed by headphones. Father slack in the driver's seat. I punched the horn twice and watched the kid startle and the father snap up like a drowning man finding a ledge. The flatbed and the sedan slid past slow in the dark like sharks refusing to be seen in pictures. The father rolled his window a thumb's width and gave me the jaw if men give strangers when there are children in the car. I mouthed call and the man pinkied a phone. He glanced at his wife, at his kid, and gave me the smallest helpless shrug that says I am going to choose my house tonight. Fair. I nosed back out, not wanting to make them more of the story. The math had changed. They could count me. I could count them. Past Fenner, the CB stopped pretending it didn't work. Scale house ahead. The first voice said, lights. The second rehearsed, leave him to traffic. The third suggested in a tone that had never merged legally. I aimed for the one patch of state light I knew. The agricultural inspection station east of Needles, where bored men ask about fruit like fruit, is the sharpest thing people bring into California. My fuel needle nudged the line where hope begins, but hope weighs less than gasoline, and the glow of the booth rose like a slow ship. I rolled up hot to hard on the brake, and the man inside came out with a clipboard. One of those men whose boredom is a public service. He started with any produce and ended with you okay. Because he saw my face and also saw the two shapes idling 100 yards back on the shoulder, not committing, not leaving. Followed since Amboy, I said, vests, cones, chalk on my tire, no plates, radio won't die. He looked past me, licked his thumb to turn a page he didn't need, and said, pull around back, in a tone that added don't make me say it twice. His partner picked up a phone inside like he was ordering lunch, and I tucked the U-Haul around the rear lot where they stage buses. The flatbed's appetite didn't like the menu. It eased back onto the highway and rolled away in that slow, I have nothing to hide gait. The sedan glided into the lot and idled across from us with its lights off, engine a low animal. The state guy walked out, legs loose, hand near his radio, but not on it. Like a man who wants his report to sound boring, he lifted an empty palm at the sedan. It didn't move. He said something I couldn't hear. The sedan's dome light blinked and died. It drifted out like tide dragging a toy boat. They worked the old road. The state man said once we were breathing right. Used to be rim jobs and fake toes. Now it's whatever cash and fear will buy. Vest is a uniform for trust. He squinted at my rear tire. The chalk crescent I'd wiped in Kingman had returned, bright, perfect. He flashed it with his phone and the mark glowed for a second and forgot to go back to being invisible. You want to file or you want to ride? He asked, which I now know meant do you want paperwork or a patrol car behind you until the sun makes your choices less stupid? Ride, I said. He nodded. A highway patrol unit ghosted in from the east, dark mode, and took up a post that was exactly where the flatbed had been before, a copy where a warning had stood. The patrolman was young with that gentle steady look training gives you before real nights change it. He listened while I told the story crookily, and the state guy added the parts my adrenaline had smudged. The patrolman said, they mark tires so their people know you stopped. They mark signs so their people know where to stage. They'll mark you if you stand still long enough. Don't stand still. He tucked in behind me on I-40 and we carried the last bad miles together, his presence a long hand on my shoulder. The sedan showed itself once more far back, then left like it had found new errands. Needles dawned like a promise you can keep. The patrolman peeled off with a real wave, the kind you use to be able to teach kids men's safety. Delivery in Barstow, paid enough to make groceries literal. I slept 6 hours in a motel that smelled like someone else's cigarettes and woke to 2 new missing flyers on the ice machine, same reward number, same last seen west of Ludlow, and a third with a tow company logo that didn't match any truck I'd met. I drove home the long way. CB coiled in the cargo bay like a snake you don't kill because you don't know the rules. For a while, that might have been the end, except the road in your head keeps going after the asphalt stops. Weeks later, guy at a different station bent by my back wheel and said, you know, you've still got a little chalk on there. And I said I knew a lot of things I couldn't get off. My phone had 3 voicemails of wine that weren't wine punctuated by 3 neat notes. The Amboy receipt I'd crumpled turned up flat in my glove box like paper can change its mind. I stopped telling the story like a ghost tale because it isn't. It's about men who learn the choreography of help. Cones in the right order. Triangles with theater. A clean vest where the desert makes everything dirty. A palm lifted like a benediction. And a voice that repeats yours to teach you to follow. Real horror is practical. It uses your habits against you. Politeness at a red triangle. Gratitude at a waving hand. The need to be the kind of person who stops. Here's what I learned and what I put down so the map in your head might redraw itself before you hit that stretch. If you hear a voice on a CB you didn't turn on and it calls you white box and whistles 3 notes, you don't owe it an answer. If a kid ties his shoe by your tire and leaves a clean crescent, you don't owe him conversation. If cones look too tidy and a vest is too clean, you don't owe them your brake pedal. Aim for cameras, put state lights between you and anyone who makes you feel measured. It is not your job to be the useful stranger in somebody else's night. The chalk on my tire finally wore off in rain. I didn't notice until I woke up to a car that looked like any other. I still don't take the Amboy exit after midnight. I still hear, some nights when the house gets too quiet, 3 gentle notes in the cavity of the air like an invitation to answer. I shut the window. I check the door. I let boredom save me. If the old road calls you west and somebody steps out and lays red at your bumper and points with a pencil to where the help is, remember this. Uniforms are costumes after dark. Triangles can be carpet. And the only people who get to box you in are the ones with names you can get by calling the number on the booth. If you need a ritual, make it this to fingers off the wheel to the liars, full hand to the ones with badges, and keep moving until the stars over Amboy are behind you and the only voices repeating yours belong to people you let into the cab.